I'm going to start off by saying that Zaidi, as we all know, was a tremendous Magid, and it says so on his kever. So the issue that I wanted to say is that he loved to tell stories, and he used to tell stories, and he told a little bit about the story, but not a whole lot. So I think it was Mom's idea, and it was a great idea to actually go through the battle. But in memory of Zaidi, because he loved to tell stories, what I wanted to do is not necessarily start at the actual battle, but give you enough of the background so you understand the importance of the battle and understand, what was really at stake and what was really going on in this time period at the time of the war. Okay, so the reason for why we're stopping at this place is not because Zaidi actually fought here. Okay, Zaidi was far away from here, and we're actually going to go there. But there's a couple things that you guys should recognize about this place, and hopefully it'll also give you a little bit of an understanding of what was actually at stake, and that's part of the reason for why I brought this map. Okay, so you guys can understand where we're at and what we're actually looking at, which is behind me to the left, which is this pillbox and a bridge. There's a new bridge, which is the current train bridge, and then behind it is a bridge that was actually originally built during the times of the Romans. Okay, way back there, because there was actually settlement over here and a little bit further down at Majdal, which is now considered Ashkelon. Way, way, way earlier than any of the scuffle between the Arabs and the Jewish people, and that was already during the times of the Romans, and there was already Hityashvut here. Okay, and the Romans, since then, the Arabs have lived here since the Ottoman time period for a long period of time, and even pre-state, what happened was there was something called Choma Migdal. Okay, Choma Migdal was the Hityashvut, the Jewish people that lived in Israel way before even the Tkumat Medina, when there was originally Hityashvut here, and even during the 30s and during the 20s, etc., there was an extension of the Jewish people to try and start doing Hityashvut in Israel. Right? Choma Migdal basically means what they would try and do is they would set up a yeshuv at night, where they would put up a water tower and build a wall, and then build the yeshuv on the inside. Okay. And a lot of the yeshuvim that were started in this area and way up in the north were called Choma Migdal, and because of these Choma Migdal yeshuvim, initially the maps, the armistice lines of 1949 were drawn. Okay, and what we're going to hear about a lot today is the interplay or the battles that took place that dealt with a lot of these little yeshuvim. Okay, and how it is that we got to today. So why are we stopping here at Ad Halom? I'll give you an example of what I mean. One of the first Choma Migdal places was a place called Yad Mordechai, way, way, way down south. Okay, you guys might have heard of the Battle of Yad Mordechai against the Mitzrayim that also were there. This is pre-state, where the Egyptians came up and took over these places and started to advance. And it was part of that actually led to the 1949 armistice lines, which we're going to see in a second, which included originally Yad Mordechai, which was set up before the state. Okay. Anyway, when the state was declared in 1948, okay, then what happened was obviously we know that all the different armies, the Jordanians, the Syrians, the Saudi Arabians, the Egyptians, all declared war on Israel and started to advance towards the land that was in Israel. Okay, the Egyptian army is the main army that we're going to be speaking about, and the Egyptian army advanced obviously from the south and started coming up from the Gaza area and started moving into this area. Okay, and up until after the state was declared, they kept advancing until September and October. And why are we stopped at this point? We're stopped at this point because this place is called Ad Halom. Anybody know what the word Ad Halom means?
They got until here.
Until here. Okay. So basically, this is the place, the most northern reach of the Egyptian army. Okay, and you can see that there's a number of different monuments. The Egyptians were able to set up a monument based off of the truce that they had with the Israelis a little bit later on. And it's important to understand the Ad Halom, this place is being Ad Halom for two reasons. Okay, number one is because this is the starting point for an operation called Mivtza Yoav. Okay, this is where Mivtza Yoav started. And also to understand when we're going to drive, one of the reasons why I wanted you to drive pretty far is to understand what's at stake. When we drive from here and go south, okay, what you're going to start to notice is that this is the most fertile land in all of Israel. Okay, this area along the coast and then moving in a little bit closer towards Beersheba is pretty much the breadbasket of where we get a lot of Israel's main crops from, except for what's up in the north also, which is also land that the Jewish people had to fight for way up in the north near Kiryat Shmona. But this is very much the breadbasket. And you'll see for kilometers and kilometers, what we were fighting over was our sustenance, basically, our ability to be able to create bread, to create food out of the land that we were given. Okay, and I'm going to show you another map to also explain why this particular area was of very much strategic importance. Okay, so let me show you very quickly on this map that I brought. Okay, I'm going to put it down because otherwise it's going to be a little windy. Okay, can you guys all see? It's a little bit hard to see, but basically we're here in Ashdod, okay, in a place called Ad Halom. Okay, the Egyptian army, when they started out in 1948, the original 1949 armistice lines, if you take a look, basically, and I have a map of it over here, it's a little bit harder to see, but the armistice lines went from, I'll go from Yerushalayim, which basically goes in like this all the way till there, and then basically it went up. The Egyptian, the line that was going to be a Palestinian state went all the way up past Nitzan and very close, past Ashdod almost, and was going to be till there. Okay, so the Egyptians were fighting up here, and this area above here, this was going to be part of the Jewish state, and then down here, what you see also over here was also going to be part of the Jewish state. Okay, but what you notice also is that on this map you'll see that there's a very thin area which connects between Gaza and Yerushalayim, and the intent of that was so that the Palestinians could have a thoroughfare between. The problem is that that basically cuts off any of the contiguous areas of the Jewish state. So you wouldn't have this part of the Jewish state being able to communicate with any of this part of the Jewish state, even though there were yeshuvim over there. Okay, and it happened a lot. That what you'll notice is that a lot of times, because even in the land that was supposed to be the Jewish state after the armistice agreement was signed, the Egyptians used to attack a lot of the convoys of supplies that used to try and go back and forth to these various different yeshuvim. Okay, and finally, with the backdrop of the war, one of the things that happened a lot was that there was a lot of chilufei kochot. Okay, the Egyptians would attack, and then the Jews would attack, even after they tried to have multiple different armistice agreements that would stop pretty much the fighting, but fighting then continued. So one of them that happened, the Knesset on the 6th of October gave a final order that says that we need to be able to get back these lands that the Egyptians are not allowing us to be able to transfer any of our supplies to. And we need to be able to push back the Egyptians so we have enough of a contiguous land and push back the Egyptians from being too close to where we're at. That was the basis of Operation Yoav. Okay? And it started over here. So that was on the 6th of October. On the 17th of October, the Egyptians attacked a convoy, peaceful convoy of basically Haganah that was trying to bring supplies, and that gave enough of a the 14th of October, and there were 16 trucks that were passing by Egyptian positions that were supposed to bring supplies, and they were then attacked by the Egyptian army, and that gave enough of an incentive for the Haganah to then start getting up and attacking the Egyptian army and pushing them back. Okay, Mivtza Yoav. Okay, this is called Operation Yoav, which was also called the 10 Plagues. Was an Israeli military operation that was carried out between the 15th and 22nd of October. Okay, so it happened right after that. They were starting to push back in the Negev desert between the 1948, and its goal was to drive a wedge between the Egyptian forces along the coast to Beersheba. Okay, so what's the whole idea? What they were trying to do was to really push back from here the Egyptian army and fight on two fronts. Okay, which is part of what led to what was called the Kis Faluja. Okay, one element of the and it was comprised pretty much of three different brigades. One was Givati. Okay, one was the 8th Shirion, which you might actually recognize. This is the same brigade that took over Latrun, okay, earlier on. And there was also the Oded Brigade and the Negev Brigade. So there was a number of different brigades that came, and their intent was really to go almost like a wedge, really, and push the Egyptian army back. So how did they do that? First of all, they went down the center, and they pushed this army back and forced them back up the coast. So what they did is they had ground troops, but they also had air support. There was 2 B-52 bombers that were given to them by the Americans at the time, and they started bombing various different Egyptian encampments along the coast and pushing them back along the coast, while at the same time other brigades went further inland and tried to push them just further and further south. Okay. At this same time, what they also tried to do was also capture very large major strategic areas. And one of the things that was captured during Mivtza Yoav was Beersheba. Okay, so the Egyptians outnumbered at that time the Haganah army by a ratio, according to what they were saying, of 500 to 60, basically. Okay, so there was a huge number of Egyptians, but still they were able to go through, and with the noise and etc. Zaidi used to talk about the fact that they used to create a lot of noise at the time, and you know, create almost like divergent things and create, you know, a lot of explosions in the nighttime, and that's part of what drove out the Egyptians out of Beersheba at the time and caused the Egyptian camp to almost consolidate into various different areas. Okay, so this is why it was important to come to this area. I'm going to read just a little bit more so you can see, and we're going to go to our next stop afterwards. Where we're going to go from here is along. We're going to go south, and I want you to pay attention to the amount of cultivation that's being done along this road, so you can see just how much land was at stake. And then we're going to drive along the 35 road. The 35 was one of the major thoroughfares between the various different encampments of where the Palestinians were, or the Egyptian army was at the time. And you'll see, even to this day, you'll see signs for, it's like a little black circle that says number 2, and it says Tarkumia. Okay, so that even to this day is still a Palestinian road for all intents and purposes, connecting Gaza back to Hebron, or back to that area which was supposed to be the West Bank, which was also supposed to be the encampment of the Palestinians. So I'm going to read a little bit more just to give a little bit more history. Why was it called Mivtza Yoav? What was this whole thing? Who was Yoav, basically? So it's called the Yoav. It was in honor of, first of all, it was commanded by Yigal Allon, which is one of the more famous commanders of the Israeli army. Sorry? Alon, which is afterwards the name of the Yeshuv. And the operation was named Yoav after Yitzchak Duvno, who was codenamed Yoav by his commanders in the Palmach. Duvno was a senior Palmach officer who was charged with the planning and leading of the defense of Kibbutz Negba and Yad Mordechai, both of which fell prior to 1948 and were recaptured afterwards during Mivtza Yoav. Duvno was killed in an air raid on Kibbutz Negba shortly after the Egyptian forces began their attack. Okay, so the Operation 10 Plagues, okay, which is also called Mivtza Yoav, came after the punishment that Hashem sent to the Egyptians for holding the Israelis captive in the Old Testament. So it's payback for the Aseret HaMakot, for the, you know, essentially Aseret HaMakot, was made and approved by the Knesset in the 6th of October, and it came through. See, the force consisted of 3 infantry brigades: the Negev Brigade, the Givati, and the Yiftach Brigade, and an armored battalion from the 8th Armored Brigade, the largest artillery formation, the same that took Latrun, that was available for the IDF at the time. On October 18th, the Oded Brigade also joined the operation, and in the evening of the 15th of October, the Israeli Air Force bombed Gaza, which is now in Majdal, which is Ashkelon, Beersheba, and Beit Hanun. A battalion of the Yiftach Brigade mined the railroad between El Arish and Rafah, so they also mined these railroads to break supply lines. And one of the key things that they were trying to do after they created this wedge was also break different supply lines. So they went basically through down the middle, and then tried to cut in from the side. On the side of the ocean, they couldn't cut through the side because the Egyptian army kept going backwards. But on the side of on the left side, on the side of the desert, they were able to break basically enemy lines, break supply lines, and basically create essentially what was called a pocket. That essentially was also known as Kis Faluja. Okay, so there was a pocket, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this a little bit later on. Of what the Israelis tried to do was basically break those supply lines. Okay, that's all we're going to say for now. So basically, this brings us up until the 22nd of October, when Mivtza Yoav officially was supposed to end, but there was still fighting continuing going on. And the next place that we're going to stop at, you just have to realize the Egyptian army will now have been pushed back all the way to Gaza, and there's a pocket of the Egyptian army much further inland, which is closer to where we're going to be. So the next stop that we're going to stop at is called the Yoav Fortress, which unfortunately is closed, which I found out about the other day. And we'll talk a little bit more. We'll continue the story on from there. Okay?